Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov's chess channel and welcome to our London system series. So in this series we're following this very nice opening from White's perspective, and today we're continuing again with the London system and the so-called berry attack. The berry attack is basically a setup, it's an attack against King's Indian, Grunfeld, Perch defense, modern defense setups that black can choose. And today we're continuing our berry attack against c5 setup that black can play. We have covered so far the b6, c6, knight from f to d7, knight to d7, bishop to f5 setups. So in order to get a better understanding of this particular video, please watch also my previous analyzed videos, because in my opinion you should watch them in a row in order to really get the grip, in order to understand really what I'm trying to say in this video. So today, what's the idea about this move c5? In my previous berry attack games we have seen some setups like d4, maybe d5, knight to f3, g6, knight to c3, bishop to g7, bishop to f4, maybe a different move, or knight to f6, and now e3 castling, bishop to e2, and maybe here black tried c6, or here maybe b6, knight from f to d7, maybe something like b6, bishop to a6. So we have covered all of this line. Bishop to f5 we have also covered. So now comes the move c5, and the move c5 is, in my opinion, one of the best ways here for black to continue, because black is challenging immediately the center. And why is black doing that? Because what white wants to do basically in the berry attack is to play the move knight to e5 and then go h4, h5, creating this flank attack. But one of the best ways to meet the flank attack is a counter attack in the center. So that's why the move c5 comes with that idea immediately. So that's why when your opponent plays the move c5 early, then I recommend you to not to go into flank attacks, because let's see now an example in which black got really outplayed, white got really outplayed, because white went into a flank attack too early. And you see now we have, I think, a great tension in the center. So here it's a game played by Alexei Shirov with the black pieces against Jovana Vojinovic. Here let's see again the game d4, we're having this berry attack, knight to f3, c5, again knight to e5, we have knight to c6, and now comes the move h4. So white wants to desperately now go into flank attacks, but it's not so good, I think. Here the evaluation is already slightly better for black. At least black has equalized the game after the move h4, because we can now undermine the pressure in the center. C takes d4, we have e takes d4, and we're attacking simply further and further the center. That's the most important thing. And here Jovana Vojinovic took knight takes c6, we have queen to c6. You can also take b takes c6, it's perfectly fine. We're staying and having an attack against the weak b2 pawn. In the game we have h5. Okay, white has his fun, of course, on the king side. White has his fun on the, with the flank attack, but still we can again attack the center. So that's why, as I said, don't play flank attacks if your opponent has played the move c5. Here knight to e4, d takes e4, queen to d2, preparing queenside castling and securing the king. But it's simply too late, because we have rook to d8 in the game, c3, and now e5, bishop to g5. And here Alexei Shirov played really a nice and cool rook sacrifice. We have e takes d4, bishop to d8, first d takes c3, you cannot take, of course, you lose the queen. Queen to d1, we have c takes b2, rook to b1, and now bishop to e6, attacking the bishop. Here we have an in-between capture on g6, h takes g6, and now bishop to g5, but bishop takes a2 is simply winning here for black. The rook is trapped. At least we can take the rook and push this pawn further. We have now 3 connected pass pawns. We have here a 3 versus 2, although black is down a whole rook, but it's temporarily, because here Alexei Shirov simply pushed his pawns further. Queen to d4, bishop takes b1, rook to b1, and now queen to c1. We have a trades of queens, and now very nice move a3, connecting these 2 pawns, threatening a2. So that's why here rook, bishop to b3, a2, we have bishop to a2, and now rook to a2. Basically the game was over, because we have now 5 versus 2 situation on the board. Black is of course much better. So you see how black can't counterplay this early flank attack. So in my opinion you should not go into flank attacks after early c5. If, let's go back, if for instance black tries here, as I said in our maybe common Slav defense setups. If black tries maybe c5, then we can go knight to e5, and then maybe he tries again c5. I think then it's a loss of tempo, then we could go into flank attacks. But here I think Alexei Shirov played really an aggressive game, c5 immediately. My recommendation is now after knight to e5, knight to c6 to simply kingside castling. So this is my recommendation, because you will have troubles, I can guarantee you that. In all the other cases, whenever your opponent plays c6, b6, and this other videos that we have covered so far, still you can go into flank attacks, but not after c5. So okay, let's see now good example how Artur Yusupov here with the white pieces, the top grandmaster from Russia from the last century, he always played really tactical beauties. d4, again knight to f6, we have now the Barry attack London system setup, bishop to e2, and now c5, again Artur Yusupov, he played here against Negi Parimarian, knight to e5, we have knight to c6, and now castling. What's here one of the main lines of blacks can be here the move knight to d7. Your opponent could also take here the move c takes d4, with the move c takes d4, e takes d4, and let's see now if he, for instance, continues with the move queen to b6. Queen to b6 can be met with knight to b5. You can also take knight takes c6. After b takes c6, we can go maybe knight to a4, queen to a5, and we can now go c3, then b4, and knight to b4, cementing our knight also on a very active score. We'll come to that line also in the continuation of our series. But one of the main and aggressive lines can be here the move knight to d7 by black. So my recommendation is simply to undermine the pressure, not to retreat back to f3, because we have already played with the knight takes d7, we have bishop to d7, and now d takes c5. What we can notice is of course the weak d5 square, and at least we have grabbed the pawn. Bishop takes c3, I don't think it brings so much. B takes c3, although you have three triple pawns on the c file, still I think we can use maybe here the b file. After potential e6 move, we can maybe cement our bishop here on d6. We still have good opportunities, maybe even to play something like bishop to f3, even c4, then to break the position. So these are rolling pawns. At least what we want to do is trade off at least one pawn of the c file, simplify the position, getting use of some files diagonals, because although this is so far not dynamic position, but I think still we can create some dynamics and get use of our bishop here. So I'm not sure if black will ever give up now his dark bishop for a knight. In the game after d takes c5, we have e5 attacking the bishop, bishop to d3, bishop to e6, protecting the d5 pawn, here queen to d2, and now comes h5. So if you try, for instance, d4, it seems like a tough and strong idea here by black, but I think knight to b5 perfectly fine, aiming here the weak d6 square, queen to e7, maybe e takes d4, maybe rook to d8, and now I think queen to e3, knight to d6 is also perfectly fine, although we're maybe losing the pawn, but we have already grabbed some pawns, so still we have a 4 versus 2 situation on the queen side, and I think it's perfectly fine. We're continuing still the game with our bishop here, and I think white is much better. So queen to d2, here played by Yusupov. His opponent played h5, h3, bishop to h6, trying finally this d4 move, rook to d1, d4, and now queen to e1. We have h4, bishop to h2, and here black tried the tactic, but it wasn't a good tactic. G takes h3, queen to g5. Okay, we can take now the knight, but still after queen to c3, you see now still we have the bishop pair. We have now 3 versus 4 situation on the king side, but we have a 4 versus 2 situation on the queen side. The bishops are still active. We can improve always the bishop's activity. We can get use of the g file, and still we can continue with something like b4, a4, b5, and similar stuff. So that was all possible because we have secured the king by castling. We didn't go into early flank attacks in the game. Yusupov's opponent tried rook to d8, queen to c4, rook to d1. I'm not going to explain now all of these tactical possibilities because this game, of course, can be played in many tactical ways. But my goal is to show you how to approach this c5 idea, to never create this early flank attack, king to g1, g2, bishop to g4 attacking, and now rook to d7 and f5 is not possible, but even if black plays in some occasions f5, still this queen can be kicked away with f4. So in the game, knight to d8 was played, b4. Finally we're getting space, finally we're attacking where we're better. We're attacking, of course, on the queen side we have this pawn majority. King to h8, f4, queen to f6, we have f takes e5, queen to c6, and now forcing the trades of queens. This is now completely winning. You see now, although this bishop is blocked out by its own pawn, but it's not a problem. We want to simply push this pawn further. So a3, we have rook to e8, bishop to c6, now b5, kicking away the knight, c6, b takes c6, b takes c6, and here black was forced to give up some decisive material. Bishop to b3, and now rook to d7, a5, we can take this pawn, rook to a2, bishop to d3. Here Yusupov simply took the bishop, and in this position black resigned because the threat is, of course, bishop to e5. Okay, let's go back. So after knight to e5, knight to c6, castling. That's recommended. Do not go into h4 lines, please. I think against much stronger opponents you will have troubles. Black will find good ways to counterattack you. Here I think after kingside castling you have a comfortable game. Even if, for instance, something like after castling knight takes e5 happens, still we can continue and have a good control of the e5 square. We see that this pawn is on a light square, so if even black goes into positional trades of pieces, bishop to g7, king to g7, and still this d5 pawn is saying it has to be previously fixed with e6, then we can play something like bishop to f3, maybe e4. So as I said, I really cannot explain all of these moves, something you have to study for yourself, but as a main strategy here it's very important to recognize to not to go into flank attack. So okay, I hope that you realize these ideas, and I hope that you enjoyed this video. Meanwhile, you can watch my other London system series videos with some other preparations against other defenses, other setups. And if you have troubles maybe to play as black, check out my King's Indian and Nimzo in Defense series, in which I show you in a nice and effective way how to play against d4. And if you like this content, you can also subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.